The whole crypto market is pretty much down at the moment. VV collectibles are down, Hero collectibles are actually going up, which is quite surprising, but we can see the coins are going down. Even stable coins have took a massive hit, and some projects that were meant to be the biggest on this stage are being called out with some of the rugs that the founders have done. So what should you actually be doing in a time like this? Should you be panicking like most people are doing, or are there ways through it that you can actually come out on top once this phase has passed? Let's talk about that. Welcome everyone, my name is Andy and I appreciate you taking some time out your day to come watch this video on the channel. Just before we get going, if you are enjoying the content and you want to support me further, you can hit the subscribe button. And if you want to support me further than that, you can join the membership. We've obviously seen VV and the likes of that been going pretty much down for the last couple of months after reaching its all-time high in January. Some people didn't expect it to happen. Other people, this is their first investment, so obviously it was a little bit of a shock, and then panic selling and all that sort of stuff goes on. And the same's happening here. It's not just with VV. There's a ton of projects on OpenSea that are doing the same. A ton of things in the cryptocurrency community that are doing the same. Bitcoin and Ethereum, I think, are down. It's like 28% in the last month or so. There's obviously going to be a lot of people who are panicking in this situation. And I do get it and I understand it completely, because I was this person when I first got into crypto. Now, I'm not someone who got into crypto in 2012, 2013. This is sort of my maybe first or second wave when it comes to a bear market that's on the horizon or is currently in progress. So I am still learning in this instance as well. And I'm never someone who's going to judge or think this is the way the world is going to go, because at the end of the day, we don't have a magic crystal ball. We're all learning in this space and we're all just trying our best to educate ourselves further within it. So I'm going to give today some of the things that I like to do in times like these, how they can help you actually move forward, and then how you can use these to your advantage when everyone kind of stops panicking and rebuilding starts to happen. The first one is sort of what we kind of covered. It's to not freak out. Freaking out is probably the worst thing that you can do. You know, there's something that I learned in the business field that I work in, cash flow panic. It's basically when you get into a stage where you've got little cash flow in your business that's coming in, and you just start to absolutely panic and do and make all the wrong decisions that don't move your business forward. Now, a lot of people get into this stage because they've either never had cash flow panic, they don't trust in their process, they've not done enough research, or they don't educate themselves enough to actually know what the right decision to make actually is. Because a lot of people in this space aren't inherently wanting to do the research but just want the money instantly, they are most likely going to be in cash flow panic all the time. Whether or not they have a lot of cash, that doesn't really matter in this instance. It's the level of content with what they have, with the decisions that they've actually made during the time where the markets were booming. But my recommendation for you is to not listen so much to the noise. By all means, educate yourself, learn further, and all that great stuff, but places like social media, YouTube channels that are just there to scare you, and people just surrounding you who don't do their own research might not be the best for you to focus on right now. So if you're checking markets every 2 minutes, you're just going to panic yourself, you're just going to make yourself even more worried. What's going to happen in the future? What's going to happen now? So take that time to just take a step back, understand why you're in certain investments, and then try to just remain calm with that. If other people's opinions, solely those opinions, are putting you in panic mode, you've probably not done enough research or understanding of a company or a business or a project to actually be involved in that project. So that might sound quite harsh, and I know there's going to be outliers there where it's not going to make sense until someone says this to you and you learn and you educate yourself further on that. But if you have done enough research, then you should know by now all of the sort of fundamentals that go into something, the reason you're getting into a project. And it's not to say that some of us just make bad decisions on the fly. I've done it. We've all done it. There's nothing wrong with that. We do have to learn in some way. I've invested in things that someone's just told me to invest in, lost most of my money, and was like, I'm an idiot. I should have done more research on that. And if I had done more research, I wouldn't have actually lost the way I had. It's the same with a lot of you in here. If these are your first time investments ever financially, it's already a very, very scary place, because the stability of these investments are unlike anything you would ever see. They just don't have any form of stability, and we need to understand that from the get-go. So if you are in this space and you're seeing this for the first time, where things are down 20-30%, even higher, even stable coins are going down like 40% from where they're at, and they're meant to be stable coins, you need to understand thoroughly why you're here and not to freak out through the research that you're doing. So kind of the first one, don't freak out. The second one is on the basis that you have freaked out and that you don't really know what's going on right now, and that is to learn from your mistakes. There's something that I always say, and I can't remember the first person who ever told me to it, but they called it tuition fees. When you make mistakes in here, these are your tuition fees. This space is extremely new, extremely volatile, and no one really understands it. There's probably a small percentage of people who get actually knowing and understanding the pathway that this space is going to. The majority of people don't and are not actually there for that. So if this is a time where you're losing a lot of money, and hopefully it's not all the money that you've actually got, please don't invest everything that you can't afford to lose in this space. It's just not healthy and you will be panicking all the time, but this is where you educate yourself. Take notes of what goes wrong, why it went wrong, what happened. We took, for example, the Azuki thing that was happening yesterday. You've been paying attention to that. You'll realise that the founder has done some kind of sketchy things in the past, and in the Twitter spaces, it didn't seem to be that they were very convicted in the things that they were saying. Therefore, if you had done research, you would have been able to understand who they were as a person, the company behind that, and sort of how this may have fleshed out. If you were someone who was in that project and have seen that to be the case, you will now understand how to maybe not make that decision in the future, find out owners who are truly by their word, and therefore invest in those people who are building the right pathway for this new space, rather than those who are maybe hurting it over the long run. Again, this is not to say that we cannot fall into those things just when there's money available or when we feel we've done enough research to get into something. But what I am telling you to do is to educate yourself on the mistakes that other people and yourself are making during these times. Because what often happens when we're in the boom, everyone is absolutely buzzing in the bull market, no one really calls out the shady behaviour, or they probably do call out the shady behaviour, but no one really cares about it because we're in a bull market. By this time, when it comes to a bear market and people are losing money, spite and hatefulness often comes to the forefront. Therefore, there's often a lot of projects that get a lot of limelight on their negative side of what they're doing. And this is where you can learn from those and what to not look for when the bull markets are coming in, meaning when bear markets do happen, you have an up and you have the education to decide what is right for you and what is not. You're able to point out the flaws, especially during the bear market. You're able to see that a lot of these companies are really just in it for the money. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. Businesses are there to make money. When it comes to projects that have roadmaps or owners that have bad track records or people that are doing shady business, it kind of adds onto itself as to why you shouldn't do it, why you shouldn't do it, why you shouldn't do it. And sometimes we still do it. So this is where we learn and we educate ourselves further on what not to do in the future and how to do it better when we have another opportunity. There was something that I'd actually saw Ecomi had tweet out yesterday, I think it was, where they talked about they built their whole business in a bear market during the biggest crypto winter that we've had, from what a lot of people say anyway. And they didn't have a lot of cash flow at the time. Now, a couple of years later, we're in another similar situation, maybe not as heavy as that was, and I'm guessing it was nowhere near as heavy as it was right now anyway, but they are continuing to build, and they have track records from what they've been able to do over the last few years and what they have been building even during a bear market. So it's one of those things where you have to understand what your investments are, what you're doing, the people behind them, and this is again why I start to believe in the companies that are doxing themselves. They have good track records from history of what they've been able to do, and then you're able to believe in their sort of roadmap and what they're actually aiming for. There are massive problems with Ecomi and Vive. There are massive problems with every single company in the world. It's who's actually got the right track record, got the fundamentals in place, have been able to convert what they were actually planning on doing in a specific period of time, and are continuing to grow their loyal following through that. With Vive, something that I personally think they are doing. I could be completely wrong, and I'm more than happy to put my hands up in 5 and 10 years if that's not the case. But it will be very interesting to use as a case study nonetheless, whatever outcome actually does happen. And finally, the one I like to do is use this time to accumulate. Most often or not, people are using fear to really get people and drag them down even further. Because if we've got just a retail investor in here, they don't have millions and millions of dollars to influence the prices of some of these projects. So things like Bitcoin and Ethereum can be heavily swayed by people who own significant amounts of these coins, although they have to really be significant amounts. And therefore, retail investors just don't have that sort of thing. And when you have big companies that are creating these news outlets to scare other retail investors into selling off their stuff so that these big corporations or big companies or governments can actually accumulate this stuff for a cheaper price, it's the retail investor who's usually losing out. So what I tend to do in these situations is have my dollar cost average and sort of dollar cost average into the things that I believe in fully. Usually during the bear markets, it's most likely going to be stuff like Bitcoin and Ethereum. Sometimes I do invest into the altcoins. I probably will be accumulating more OME during this time anyway, just to dollar cost average into what I was doing previously. When we solely invest when it's uptrending and that's all it's doing, then we're most likely going to lose out. But if we believe in a project, in a company, in a coin, in a token, anything like that, over the long run, then this is most likely the best time to accumulate more. Whilst everyone is fearful, you are greedy. And when everyone is greedy, you are fearful for what is going to happen. It's a saying that always goes about, but it is quite an important one. If you strongly believe in the fundamentals of something, then investing in it when it's down is probably the best time to do it, because the accumulation of profits that you can make, if it actually goes the way that you believe it's going to go, is going to be the best thing for you. I know this video is a little bit on the different side of what I usually do. You know, I'm mainly focused on like the IP side of things when it comes to the branding, licensed IP brands of NFTs, but I do want to get into the instance of talking more about just the crypto sphere in general as I learn more about it. I've got a long ways to go. I am by no means no expert or anything like that, so I'm just learning as we are all learning, but these are the lessons that I had learned the previous time when things heavily dropped, and I was still convicted in the plans that I was doing, and I'm still heavily up on a lot of the positions that I placed myself in back during when things were really, really low for significant periods of time. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on the lessons that you've learned either during the 2018-2017 to winter, which I actually wasn't a part of, or even before that if you were here from 2012 onwards. I would love to hear some of the lessons that you've learned that have helped you develop your knowledge further in this space to put you in the position that you're in today. I know the video on the screen now will be something you'll love to watch. Have a fantastic day.